What's up, guys? Anime Yokage back at it again, and today we're going to be talking about JJK Chapter 258. So buckle up, let's jump right into it. So when the chapter opens up, we're getting an explanation how Gojo, back whenever he was fighting Sukuna, he was able to regain some of his cursed energy and his techniques back after landing Black Flashes. This was only after 2 Black Flashes. He was able to regain his reverse curse technique and some part of his domain back. In a similar fashion, we're seeing that Sukuna is feeling the same effect whenever he landed his multiple Black Flashes, but that pales in comparison to the 8 Black Flashes that Yuji has landed, and we're possibly looking at some kind of awakening. And those 8 Black Flashes are what's keeping Sukuna from fully regaining his reverse curse technique at this point. Because every single time that Yuji is striking Sukuna, he's striking the barrier between Sukuna and Megumi's soul, thus loosening his control of Megumi's body little by little by little, and factoring in that each one of those strikes was now a Black Flash, which is, I believe, 2.25 to the power, not like 2 times stronger, 2.25 to the power, which is exponentially more. And that landed 8 times. And honestly, I believe the damage that's been done between Megumi's soul and Sukuna's soul at this point, the barrier in between, it's unrepairable. Now, although Sukuna did not get his reverse curse technique back, he did receive something from his Black Flashes. He received the ability of his domain, or a incomplete domain. The domain we see him pull forward is reminiscent of Shrine, but looks nothing like the Shrine that we have come to know. It's like a grotesque floating amalgamation of flesh. You can see that it has reminiscence of the shrine roof and everything, but it's like protruding out of the flesh, and all the teeth that we saw before, they're all broken and jagged and everywhere. And it just, it looks scarier than Malevolent Shrine in this complete form. But there's going to be some kind of pullback to this one. And again, he was only able to get this incomplete domain along the side of the Black Sparks from his Black Flashes that he performed earlier. In conjunction with the Black Flashes and also Binding Vows that are pretty much only used by Sukuna at this point, no one else wants to use a Binding Vow for some reason, he is able to create his Malevolent Shrine with no loss of output or cursed energy that he would have had before. And as Malevolent Shrine is opening, expanding, and beginning to do damage, we actually get a flashback. And in that flashback, we go back to whenever the gang, the Kusakabe clan, was talking about how they need to implement reverse curse technique. It comes down to them talking about needing to perfect simple domain in order to negate his domain and or just negate his cleave and dismantle, alongside buffing up the reverse curse technique to make sure they can all use it and stay in the battle. So knowing this, Choso brings up the question, well, how do you guys do reverse curse technique? Hikari has no explanation whatsoever because he says, it's kind of like auto for me. Once I hit my domain expansion, I don't do any of the work, thus I don't know how it's done. My body just does it for me because of my domain. We knew that already. I was expecting a little more insight from Yuta, but Yuta just simply says, I go off instinct too. And that's because Yuta is literally a cursed energy genius. He doesn't know how he's doing it, he just envisions it and it happens. But Shoko can explain it a little bit better. She claims that she converts her cursed energy into blood, which is great because Choso's actual curse technique allows him to convert his cursed energy into blood, thus kind of being along the same lines. Now, I don't mean he's using reverse curse technique every time that he uses his attacks, but it's not so foreign to one another, and or the idea isn't so foreign to where they can't start figuring it out, or at least whenever they learn it, use it more efficiently. Choso brings up the fact that if Yuji is to consume the other Death Wound paintings, their brothers, he'll be able to take on the blood manipulation curse technique that we've been seeing him utilize throughout this fight. And him learning that technique will negate the large expense of energy that RCT usually demands. If he's able to manipulate the blood like RCT would need to do, then it's like he's doing it for the RCT, then it's a lot less load bearing on the RCT itself, thus allowing him to not expend much more energy. So now that Choso in his mind has got that all figured out, that he's just gonna eat the Death Wound paintings and then I'll teach him how to use it, he suggests that the switch training that they're talking about right now, one of the people in the switch training needs to be a reverse curse technique master, in order for Yuji to learn it inside and out. Now, Yuji is looking at Choso just like we're looking at this panel. What's switch training? And apparently we get an explanation for this, because switch training is what we saw a long time ago whenever Yuji and Kusakabe apparently switched souls for their bodies. And no, this is not a technique of Yuji. This is actually a technique of Wee, Mei Mei's brother, aka the groomed one. I heard the groomed one on TikTok, and that's really funny. Anyways, moving forward. We learn here that Wee is actually not just only able to teleport from places he's previously marked or to people that he's marked. He's actually able to teleport the souls between two people and swap them. And normally when it comes to messing with the soul, it would mess with the body, as we've seen with Mahito and everything in the past when it comes to messing with souls. But it's different, because Wee explains it as the soul is in a box. If that box is open, then it will mess up the body. But he's not opening the box and switching the souls. He's simply switching the boxes. So, in a lack for better words, he's really just swapping, but making sure that he keeps the seal on the soul, so nothing's disturbed internally. So, as we've seen, they took advantage of Kusakabe and his simple domain mastery. Now, who did he switch bodies with in order to master reverse curse technique? They came to the conclusion that Yuji can actually learn RCT and the simple domain because they looked at Yuji's progress as a sorcerer as a whole. We have to remember it has not been a very long time since Yuji became an official sorcerer. And in that time, he's made incredible leaps and bounds and been somewhat of a prodigy, not like Yuta, but somewhat of one. And Kusakabe in this scene is attributing it to the time that he had inside his body with Sukuna, when Sukuna would swap places with him. In a total amount of time that Sukuna has used Yuji's body, it's maybe a good 10 minutes tops, because he's only switched with him for maybe 3 or 4 times, and in those times, it wasn't very much time at all. But Sukuna, being the special grade sorcerer that he is, above all, I mean, I don't even know if special grade is a legitimate class to put him under because he's so far and above. Being exposed to that much of cursed energy and cursed energy understanding is allowing Yuji to make leaps and bounds. And when it comes to picking things up and being a natural in order to understand and learn cursed energy like Yuji's already been, it creates a deadly combo of someone who can learn, adapt, and implement in a very, very, very short amount of time. Now we switch back to Hikari, Mei Mei, and Wei all talking about, or Wee, however you say it, all talking about how this is going to be implemented. And Hikari brings up the fact, isn't there a binding vow that does not allow people outside of the new Shadow Style school in order to learn Simple Domain? Isn't there something against them being able to use it unless they have learned it officially? And oddly enough, Mei Mei says, don't worry, I've taken care of it. I don't know what that means. I don't know if she has somehow made an exception or she's bent the rules, or I don't even know how that works. I didn't know you'd have to go to an actual school in order to learn it. I thought someone who knew it could just teach you, but I guess that's not the case. Then we move back to Wee, and Wee explains that in a single month, there is a limit to 2 swaps per body. So I'm assuming that they can swap back and forth once and then swap back and forth twice. Or does that mean that they can only swap once and then the second time is the swap back? I'm not sure, but it's kind of leaning towards they are able to swap back and forth and that counts as 1, because they explained that there are 2 months and they will have multiple pairings. If that wasn't the case, then the swap forward and back would most likely be it. But in this, he says, make sure that you pick your pairings wisely. He's not just talking to Yuji, he's talking to the group. So is it a possibility that anyone else in the group has utilized this type of training? If we go back to whenever Sukuna was fighting against Yuta and Yuji, he asked, how did you guys grow so fast? And Yuta said, we cheated. Now, if Yuta was only talking about Yuji, would it make sense for him to say, we cheated? I know they're a team, but if other people could take on other curse techniques just from swapping bodies with them. How many possible new power-ups do we have for each person? And maybe their curse technique isn't more powerful than the one that they already have. You know, they may have an already more powerful curse technique, but it's all about the element of surprise. If Sukuna doesn't believe that this person can use that kind of curse technique, then it's a complete surprise out of nowhere to who's using the new technique and who he needs to watch out for, be it close or long distance away of the attack. So we cut back to Yuji defending himself against Malevolent Shrine, and he's enacting new Shadow style Simpo Domain. And the more that we see of this incomplete domain, we know that it is quite different from the regular Malevolent Shrine. Instead of just being a shrine that's sending out tons of slashes and cuts everywhere, it's sending out tons of slashes and cuts, but it's turning into like some kind of sword tornado. It's looking like it's pulling up the debris even from the ground from the sheer force of the whirlwind of these cuts. And Yuji says, since it's incomplete, I know there is some opening or some kind of loophole to where I can endure this. If you guys remember Megumi's incomplete domain, he needed to be somewhere where his shadow could completely envelop, like an indoor space, to where the people wouldn't be able to escape. That kind of made a pseudo-complete domain. But if he were just simply outside and did his domain, you could just jump out of the domain and you would not beat it anymore. Now, usually whenever Sukuna enacts his domain, the reason that it's so powerful and has such a wide range is because it does not have a barrier on it. And the barrier would enact a sure hit effect. But this allowed Sukuna to make a much wider range and much wider array of powerful attacks. Now that he has enacted a domain within a barrier that he's made, now there's two separate techniques that he's making a pseudo-complete domain. But doing that has changed how his domain works. His complete domain actually allowed for escape. So if you were fast enough or if you were Gojo, you could simply shoot yourself out of the domain and you wouldn't be hit by anything. But creating this barrier intensifies how powerful everything is within a smaller radius. So he's concentrated how all this power is condensed into one smaller point rather than a very large area. And that means that the sure hit effect would activate because it is within a domain being a pseudo-complete domain. It also says another reason that he did this is to make sure that he could hit Maki, because normally Maki would not be recognized by the domain of the barrier because she is of no cursed energy. So whenever a domain locks on something for a sure hit effect, it locks onto cursed energy. Normally it would not do this for Maki because she has no cursed energy. It would just pass over her and not target her at all. But now that it's just a wide spread and spray of all this tiny area, there's no way that she's not going to be hit. It kind of makes a fake sure hit effect just for her even. This incomplete domain does not come without a price though. Along with everything else that we've already talked about, it also will only run for 99 seconds, which that's more than enough time considering the damage this thing is doing. But 99 seconds and then it's done. And then we're not sure if Sukuna can make a domain after that. So as long as everybody can hold on to their simple domains throughout the entirety of this attack, it will have all been for nothing, at least on Sukuna's part. So we see everybody enacting their simple domain in order to fight off against the Malevolent Shrine, and they're all yelling, bear against it, just hunker down and don't let your simple domain break. The last person that we see activating their simple domain is Choso, and Choso still seems to be worried about Yuji yelling out for him even though he's in the middle of a giant sword maelstrom. That leads me to believe that Yuji, even though he swapped bodies with Kusakabe, may not be a complete master of simple domain. And even after all the black flashes, it may be significant enough in order for him to break his simple domain while trying to fight off against Sukuna's Malevolent Shrine. And Choso was right for a reason, because in the next panel, we see that Yuji's simple domain breaks and he is starting to take on the slashes from Malevolent Shrine. And if he didn't master simple domain, I sure hope he mastered reverse curse technique, because it really looks like he needs it about now. Because in the next panel, we see that Yuji is one leg short of a whole body. He actually gets one of his legs cut off, I think specifically his left leg, and normally this wouldn't be a problem because he can enact reverse curse technique and grow it right back. But we can't tell right here if he's doing that immediately. He's just standing up, and the way that it's drawn looks like he could either be standing on his newly regrown foot, or if he's standing on the nub of which his foot used to be. But the slashes have stopped, so Yuji assumes that we endured it, I guess, because he doesn't know it's exactly 99 seconds. He just thinks that perhaps Sukuna did it in a last-ditch effort, and he didn't have that much power. But it is indeed 99 seconds. The slashes have stopped, but in the next scene, we get the infamous Fuga, which is translated here to furnace, open. And again, it's moving along with Sukuna's whole cooking and eating kind of theme to his curse techniques. Now, we've seen Fuga before, and I believe we've seen it twice. One when he took out Jogo, and then one when he took out Maharaga. And we've been waiting to see it ever since because it is incredibly powerful. I'm talking a small nuclear explosion within a fire arrow. It is insane. It's building melting, glass melting as it falls around it. It's incredible. It's way overpowered. Now, I have a theory that the only reason that he's able to pull off Fuga right now is because he had 99 seconds of the straight slashing. If he sees that everybody is enduring the slashing with simple domain, those don't have enough power. So, the main person on this battlefield that is posing a threat to Sukuna right now is Yuji, because Yuji is the only one being able to land these consecutive black slashes and also strike the barrier between Megumi and Sukuna's soul each time that he hits. Sukuna will lose his hold on Megumi's body if this keeps up. And if he keeps landing black flashes, who knows? Even someone like Ino could become a threat to Sukuna, because the more he gets hit with black flashes, the weaker he will become. So my theory is that Sukuna has made a binding vow to relinquish or sacrifice the time remaining on his domain that he has going on right now, the Malevolent Shrine. He has sacrificed the remaining time that he has on that to perform Fuga at full power against Yuji. And that would make more sense, because you can't tell me for the next chapter or the half the chapter we're just going to get people holding the new Shadow style just going, hold it, come on. You can only draw that so many times. It would actually show Sukuna's prowess and knowledge behind cursed energy techniques if he is able to use one of the yet another binding vow in order to create a full blast powerful Fuga in order to fire at Yuji, because one of those against Yuji is not going to leave a body in order for him to regenerate. And he's already broken his simple domain, so it's not like Yuji can negate some of the power. If he fires this off at Yuji, someone is gonna have to get in the way that has simple domain to the correct level in order to deflect or at least diminish this attack. Anyways, we're on break next week from JJK, and this week I didn't get to the One Piece and or the My Hero Academia of the last chapters, so I will be doing a short recap on those in the next video, and also whenever those chapters release. Since I'm getting this out late, it just makes sense to jump straight to the next chapter rather than have my last week's chapter up for a day before the new chapter comes out. It doesn't make sense. So I'm going to hit up on those, and then also we're going to wait till next week in order to hear back about JJK and what happens to the good guys. On top of that, Boruto is coming out on a pretty regular schedule, and things are starting to get pretty hyped there. So if you guys would like me to start covering Boruto, please let me know below. I am always looking for more content to cover for you guys and keep getting better and better at this. So thank you guys for stopping by. I'm Enemy Okage. See you later.